Good afternoon, and welcome. It is 2 o'clock precisely. I can see people entering the room. Welcome, welcome. Thank you very much for attending and registering. We will be starting pretty much straight away, but I will wait for a few 30 seconds or so just to make sure that everybody catches the start. Just a bit of housekeeping in the meantime. In the chat, I have put some information about how you can get in touch with me after this session. I'm going to be sending you an email after the session too, with the slides, but also with a one-pager with some questions for you to think about in terms of your leadership style moving forward, which I hope will be useful. I shall refer to that a little bit as well during the session. And I will be answering a few questions at the end in the chat, please, not Q&A. So if you can leave those right until the end of the session so that I can find them easily, because I haven't got anybody here to moderate for me. I shall be reading through myself and finishing that off. Okay, well, we are a minute after 2. I shall be sending the recording of this as well for those who can't make it. I know some people have school holidays. Now it's half term, so some are going to be listening back, and others I've already said I will send it over, so I shall do that. But welcome for those who are working and who can make it today, which is great news. Okay, so let's get started then, shall we? My name is Philippa Haynes. I'm the founder of Insight 101, which is a brand and marketing consultancy. And I support accountants and bookkeepers to stand out. Today, I'm going to be talking about how you can be the modern day leader, which is going to increasingly be the secret to a bookkeeper's success and an accountant's success as well, importantly. In the next 40 minutes or so, I'm going to be talking about one question which you need to be able to answer, which is basically about your leadership style. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the 3 pillars of modern day leadership, which you need to think about and execute. And those pillars are the starting points for you to insert your leadership in your day-to-day activity within your business. So at the end of 40 minutes, you will have that question and those 3 pillars. We'll go through Q&A then. You've got my details on the side, and I will be sending out the recording, the slides, and the one-pager too. So hopefully this is the start of something for you to think about and execute. Good. Let's get started then. So why am I talking about leadership today? It's incredibly important, actually, and certainly for accountants and bookkeepers. We've seen, for those who went to Accountex, we've seen all of that software out there, all of those apps, all of the AI as well that's coming through, that is obviously going to support accountants and bookkeepers in their daily work. Actually, it's going to take away a lot of the work that you are currently doing now. Now, if you were to read a McKinsey report, which I did, in there is one stat that says 90% of the work that you do now and 90% of your training up until this point is actually going to be automated. Now, that shouldn't necessarily mean that we all rush off into the hills screaming. Not at all. Our businesses will continue because, as we know, even with the software that we have now, there is a lot of hand-holding that needs to be done with clients and team members and prospects. But what it does mean for the future is that big 90% chunk is going to go away. And the question that you really need to ask yourself is, what are you going to do? What are you going to fill it with? And of course, that is partly some of the work that you really wished you could do anyway, but you just simply don't have the time. I know that certainly in your work, there's a lot of data there, there's a lot of spreadsheets, there's a lot of really detailed work. That means that takes up your time. Well, increasing that time, as you know yourselves, is going to go away. And so that void there will be a lot more emotional, a lot more kind of leadership generating. And that's why it's really important for us to talk about leadership today, because you're going to be doing your advising, you're going to be doing your influencing, you're going to be talking about growth and potential and all of those value added parts to the work that you do now that sometimes you feel like you probably don't have enough time to do. Well, the good news is that is going to increasingly going to be your role. It's about relationship building and really getting involved in the clients and with the client's work on a much deeper level. So we're moving to the emotional from the logical. What that actually means, though, is you need to think about leadership. What does that mean for you as a business owner? Yeah, how are you going to kind of show up? That's what everybody likes to say at the moment. How are you going to show up? What type of leader are you going to be? And that's really important to think about because actually, in 2025, things haven't changed dramatically yet, but things are really accelerating. We know that. We've seen it all. As you walked through Accountex, if you attended, there was Sage and Copilot there talking about AI. It's everywhere. So you really need to start thinking about how you're going to show up. And it's going to be your flavor of leadership. Now, I'm going to say the horrible phrase personal brand, which I think turns people off. And it's understandable because personal brand to some is about the color that you wear or, the sorts of dancing that you do on social media or whatever. I'm not talking about that. Personal brand fundamentally is about the sort of person that you are, how you come across, what you stand for. That is what's really, really important. You need to delve deep and start to think about who you are and how you want to lead your team, your clients, your prospects, but also your peers, that sort of thought leadership part. Because at the end of the day, what you need to be dealing with is not necessarily all the data, but it's about trust as well. You are the person that people are going to come to for the advice, for that emotional part of the role. And they need to be able to trust you. So you need to be very clear about the emotional support that you're going to give, that sort of brand of leadership that you are going to bring to your business. And it's really the most fundamental part of your business because despite, us talking about names of business, logos, design, and, I talk about websites and all of that good stuff. But fundamentally, you are the business owner. You are in that leadership role. And when you aren't in the room, you want to be sure that what people say about you is accurate. Yeah, it's what people say about you when you're not in the room that will define your leadership. So it's very important to be intentional. I was talking last week with somebody about going to some of these trade shows, and the difference is you can walk through the door and go, where am I going to go? You know, who am I going to see? Or you can walk in intentionally with, this is who I am. This is the leadership role that I want to drive forward. This is what I'm about. It makes a big difference. So once that foundational piece has been done, then you can think about, you know, the website that should be there. It should be talking about how you lead, not only you, but your team, how you lead the dialogue, how you lead your clients, how you lead those prospects. It needs to all be there in the support, in the background. It's absolutely critical. What I do want you to know, though, is you don't have to be superhuman in order to achieve that leadership role. It's not about being something different than you are already. It's not about having superpowers or being really loud or suddenly being on TikTok or doing any of those things that just aren't you. Yeah, it's about acknowledging who you are and the type of leader that you want to be. And I do remember at the end of the first session when I talked about this, Leander Dado, who is a bookkeeper, came up to me and said, thank you so much. You know, I've had a real light bulb moment because actually I was thinking I needed to change who I was. And I do now realize that in order to be authentic, you know, I have to lead, you know, against the person that I truly am. So that message is very clear to me, which is there isn't one size that fits all. Yeah, you've got to be yourself. You've got to put yourself in that leadership role, and you've got to be known for something. So let's talk about the 3 pillars of modern leadership then. So I want to talk to you about clarity, first of all. Clarity is that foundational piece. Who are you? How do you appear? How do you show up? The communication of that, you know, we need to have a very short, succinct statement of who you are, what you do, and who you help and how. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then the connection part is actually living and breathing that leadership style that you have decided is what you're all about. Those 3 need to come together. Clarity of message, communicating it out, and living it. So this is a big question, and I'm going to be using some examples to help you with that, some stories about other people, so that you can start to understand what I mean. But at a fundamental level, ask yourself now, who are you and what do you stand for? Yeah, if somebody were to describe you, team member, family, friend, what would they say really encapsulated who you are? Strong, willful, you know, interested in mental health, sustainability, maybe thinking about your interests now, what you get involved in, maybe even your past experiences, which have molded now how you show up and how you've decided to drive your business forward. These are all the questions that you should be asking yourself. Now, I want to talk about 3 different people. All 3 have been guests on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast that I co-host with Mark Lee. The beauty of this session is you can go away and listen to them as well and really get a feel for who they are, which I think is, really a bonus. You'll get a feel, and quite interestingly, within those 30 minutes, I think you can absolutely get one line from each person to describe who they are. Now, the aim of the podcast is to shine a light on people who we think, business owners, who are doing great things. And we want to hear about the stories. We want to get a sense of the type of leader they are. We want to understand about the highs and lows, the mistakes they've made. But what is really fascinating is that these 3 people have very different leadership styles. As I've said before, one size doesn't fit all. So when we start to think about this clarity question, which is who are you? What are you about? Maybe use these 3 as an aid for you to start thinking yourself. So the first one is Anne Wordsworth from Cube Accounting. Anne, I've been aware of for a couple of years now. She's on LinkedIn quite a bit, or she has been. And we spoke to her, obviously, on the podcast. And she's very much open and transparent about her mental health issues. She suffers with quite severe anxiety and depression. And I'm not telling you anything that she wouldn't talk about herself. But she really struggles. She really struggles day to day. And what doesn't help is working really hard, but her personality is that she's kind of really tries hard and she works long hours. And actually, as a result of that, she struggles with anxiety and depression. And so it's a bit of a vicious circle. Now, Anne has actually taken it upon herself to build her business around that. So she knows that she needs, after every 6 weeks or so in the office, she needs a week away on holiday. And that's how she set up her practice. So she has her team around her. They're all aware of the fact that she's away every 6 weeks or so. And so everything has been put in place for her to be able to manage that, and the team as well. I mean, that's really, really important. And Anne is, a fantastic business owner and works really well with her clients. Interestingly enough, last week I saw a post from her that said that she'd been very quiet for the last 5 or 6 months because she'd been struggling, really, really struggling with her mental health, and that she'd had some serious problems. Now, that is leadership, obviously, in terms of showcasing the issues of anxiety and depression, showcasing how a business owner kind of deals with that, and really showcasing about being transparent as well. So that's Anne. Then we have Gareth Burton from Progress Accountants. He is a very upbeat, optimistic, highly curious, massively into tech, innovative, just kind of fantastic guy who's constantly on the move. When we had him as a guest, we spoke a few minutes before that podcast went live, and he was showing us all the gadgets he's got and all of the new stuff, and he's just completely taken with gadgets and technology. And he actually spends quite a bit of his time going to various conferences around the world, in fact, to gain new ideas, to have conversations, to sort of put himself out there. So, I mean, if Anne's kind of leadership style or leadership is all about kind of mental health and, you know, supporting, being highly supportive of people and kind of being open, Gareth is really about curiosity, about being innovative and looking at new ways of doing things. That's really what he's all about. And then we have Mitch Hahn, who is part of Norden's. They are a much bigger practice, but he joined the practice when it was like the two of them, so the business owner and him. So he's not an owner, but he pretty much should be. And he has grown the business pretty single-handedly himself. And he is an absolute people person. He loves people. He spends most of his time outside of the office, over a cup of coffee, one-to-one. You don't see him on social media very much. He is very much the person who goes out and visits, who networks, who is the real sort of traditional kind of people person. He likes to sort of see people in person, face to face. And that's a leadership style. So, you know, when he's talking to people, he's not on email. He's not on the phone. Certainly when he's in the office, you know, he goes to find people, he sits in front of them. So he's a real people-centered person, and that kind of shows in everything that he does. So three very separate, different people with a very different leadership style. Now I'll start to talk about how they draw that into their day-to-day business, because that's the powerful bit. So once you've decided, now we've heard about Anne and Gareth and Mitch, I do want you to ask yourself again the question of, who are you? What do you stand for? You know, what is your identity? What can you potentially use in your dealings and in your business and in your leadership style? Second pillar then is the communication part, and it's no good being the best in the room if people don't really understand what you're about. How many times have you been somewhere where there's somebody else who's kind of been talking and sort of really getting everybody kind of animated and interested? I mean, you know them and think, well, actually, you know, in terms of experience, I'm so much better and this, that, and the other. Well, the whole point is that, you know, you have to enable people to understand what you're about. You have to be on the front foot. You need to be intentional, and you need to have your message come across. And what you really need to be able to do is, once you've had that sort of clarity part pillar, you need to then think about the communication. And this is where, you know, one statement, simple, is what you really need to kind of aim for, which is, I help blank achieve blank by how. And that, I mean, if we were to use Gareth as an example, so he's very much about curiosity and innovation and technology. He identifies his ideal clients as technology owners or engineering or science. So entrepreneurial businesses that have been through the first phase of funding. So they have money, but they need quite considerable help now from an accountant to ensure that, you know, the growth goes in the right direction, the money is spent in the right way. So Gareth would be saying, I help entrepreneurial businesses that have had the first round of funding to achieve significant growth or massive growth by working in parallel with them, delivering the data, you know, as soon as possible, having the technology or whatever it is to achieve that. So you get the idea. But That's the sort of sentence or statement that you need to get to. And that will be your aid memoir, essentially, so that you can remind yourself, when you are walking into a room, when you're going networking, when you are just at your desk, that is how you start to define who you are. So have a think about what that would mean for you. Okay. And the third pillar is about connection. And that is about living your leadership. So it means getting out there, having those coffees. It means with your social media, LinkedIn, whatever it is. But obviously, your leadership style is based on and how you bring that to reality is based on the sort of person you are. So if you're quite shy and stuff, then you may want to find different ways of bringing that leadership out. Yeah, you don't need to suddenly run onto the stage. That's not what we're talking about at all. It's about getting out there, working with the parameters that you're comfortable with, understanding what your leadership style, and choosing the right vehicles in order to show that. Yeah. So that's the externally focused bit. So the marketing, the kind of talking to prospects, even talking to clients. But there's also the cultural bit as well, the team bit. So let's think about that. So Gareth, for instance, from Progress, he's, as we've talked about, works quite fast, innovation, technology. But the way that he drives his team, he calls himself the Chief Impact Officer, first of all, which I think is rather nice. But every 3 months, so every quarter, Gareth sets up an out of office kind of workshop, and everybody goes to talk about problems that they have, but more importantly, to talk about new ideas. And Gareth's job is not to input there. He provides the environment. His job is to ensure that these ideas come across, that the team have the opportunity to speak about them, and for them to decide how best to proceed. So he takes very much a kind of a backseat when it comes to new ideas, but he is promoting new ideas and innovation all the time. So he never sits still. The business doesn't sit still, his clients don't sit still, and the team doesn't sit still. And he's naturally curious as well. So that works really, really well. Let's think then about Anne, who obviously we've talked about the mental health side of things. Now, the way that she works, as I've said, is she set up her business so that it can run without her. That's really, really critical. But the other thing, which has been quite amazing to see, is how her staff behave around her. They are very kind of aware of some of her issues, but Anne has a very much an open door policy. So what it's meant is her team now come to her if they have issues. So before our podcast, she'd been talking to one of the younger team members who'd got a problem, but it's very much an open door policy. It's very much come in, tell me how you're doing, what are some of the issues. So just because Anne has issues herself, it doesn't mean that she takes herself away every 6 months and she's really absent. She's not, because when she's there, she's really there, and she wants people to be open about how they're feeling. And guess what? That actually translates into how she works with her clients and how her team work with the clients, because that sort of that way of working, that way of being empathetic, that emotional intelligence really translates into their day-to-day. Now, one of the interesting things is I would love to see Gareth and Anne's marketing and websites and, actually convey more of that, because I know them. If you do that deep dive into the 30 minutes and look at the podcast or listen to it, you'll get a sense of who they are. It's really, really fantastic. And then Mitch, he's emotionally intelligent. I mean, he's just really into people. Um, People are the fundamental bricks as far as he's concerned, and that makes a lot of sense. But he wants to make sure that people are happy. He wants to make sure that everybody feels seen. When we spoke to him, he was having everybody who wanted it could have a Zoe kind of app. What do you call it? An app, yeah, health scan basically. So you can understand some of the foods that work better for you. So he's all about kind of health and well-being and bringing this conversation into the practice. And I think that's amazing, given there are nearly 80 people in that business. So, but he's such a people person. He's so into kind of relationships and finding out about people, and that's how he works with his clients. So he sits and listens, he answers the right questions, but essentially he's very good at getting information out of people. And so he's highly skilled at that emotional intelligence piece. So 3 very separate types of leaders that work in very different ways. So those are the questions and those are the pillars that you need to be thinking about. And it's really important to understand that leadership is a decision. It's something that you need to be intentional about. Because if you aren't, people are going to have perceptions of you anyway, So you need to make sure that you have a strategy, that you really know how you want to show up, how you want to talk, how you want to deal with your clients, how you want to deal with your team. And this question about how you turn up, how you show up, is the real start of that. So it's fair to say that as business owners, you are all leaders already. The question is, what do you want to be remembered for? And how are you going to lead your team and your clients into a future that is very much based around technology and AI? What is that emotional layer that you're going to bring so that you can influence them, they can trust you, and you get more out of, out of work and out of the numbers? That is the absolute key for you. Now, just finally, if you have any questions, if you'd like to have a chat with me about any of this, about how I can support, you can find me here or you can find my details in the chat. Just like to know at this point whether anybody has any questions, if there's anybody, I hope that the chat is working. So if you have some questions here, I'm happy to open it up to the floor. Anything? Okay, great stuff. Well, I will send you the recording of this session. I will send you the presentation slides itself and the one-pager that you can work through. And I will send that out tomorrow so that you have that in your inbox and you can come back to me with any questions. I hope that has proven to be very useful for you, and I hope that you have a great rest of your afternoon in the sun. Thank you.